What if the God who said, "I am the only God," wasn't the highest God at all? What if the creator of this world was born from a mistake and didn't even know it? In 1945, ancient texts buried in the Egyptian desert revealed a creation story so dangerous it was hidden for centuries, a story where the true source is beyond this universe, and the ruler of this world is something else entirely. At the center of it all is a forgotten figure named Sophia, and her single act that changed eternity forever. If this story is true, then Genesis is not the beginning. It's the cover story, Sophia and the forbidden creation. They tried to hide rotero continuo, sem subtitulus. What if the story of creation you were taught was only the surface of a much older, much more dangerous narrative? What if before Genesis, before Adam, before the command, "Let there be light," there was a fracture in eternity itself, a disturbance in the divine fullness, a mistake that gave birth not to perfection, but to a ruler who did not know where he came from. In 1945, in the deserts near Nag Hammadi in Egypt, a sealed jar was discovered buried beneath the sand. Inside were ancient codices, texts that had been hidden for centuries. These writings contained ideas so radical, so destabilizing to Orthodox theology, that many scholars believe they were deliberately suppressed. And at the center of these writings is a figure almost completely erased from mainstream Christianity. Sophia. Sophia, whose name means wisdom, was not human. She was not an angel. According to the Gnostic cosmology described in texts like the Apocryphon of John and the Gospel of the Egyptians, she was an aeon, an emanation from the highest, unknowable source. The ultimate divine principle in Gnostic thought is beyond description, beyond personality, beyond gender. It is sometimes called the monad, the invisible spirit. From this source emanated pairs of divine attributes, luminous beings forming the pleroma, the fullness of divine reality. Sophia existed within this fullness, but something happened. The texts describe her act in different ways. Some say she acted out of longing. Others suggest a desire to comprehend the unknowable source directly. Some portray it as a movement without her consort, without balance. Whatever the motive, Sophia attempted to bring forth something on her own, outside the harmonious structure of the pleroma. And from that solitary act, something emerged. It was not radiant, it was not harmonious, it was malformed, incomplete, chaotic. This being is called Yaldabaoth. He is also called Saklas, Samael, the blind god. He did not know the pleroma. He did not know Sophia. He did not know the source. He believed himself to be self-existent. Ashamed of what she had produced, Sophia cast him away, outside the luminous fullness, into a lower realm, a region of shadow and turbulence, and there, separated from the higher reality, Yaldabaoth began to act. According to the Gnostic texts, he gazed into the remnants of divine light that clung to him and declared, "I am God, and there is no other beside me." In Orthodox tradition, similar declarations are expressions of divine sovereignty. In the Gnostic reinterpretation, they are statements of ignorance. This is the turning point of the forbidden creation. Because in this version, the creator of the material universe is not the ultimate source. He is a being born of error, unaware of the higher realms, constructing a cosmos in imitation of what he cannot fully perceive. Yaldabaoth did not create alone. From himself, he generated powers, archons, rulers, authorities. These entities governed the structures of matter, time, and limitation. They fashioned heavens, spheres, systems. They established laws. They created a framework designed to contain consciousness within boundaries. The material universe in this narrative is not evil in the simplistic sense. It is incomplete. It is a copy, a shadow of the true fullness. And then humanity appears. The archons attempted to shape a being in their image, but something unexpected happened. The higher realm intervened. The divine spark, an element of the original fullness, was breathed into the human form. In some versions, Sophia herself secretly implants this spark. In others, a higher divine emissary ensures that humanity carries within it a fragment of the true light. This changes the hierarchy completely, because now there exists within the material world a being whose origin is not limited to the creator of matter. In the Gnostic reading of Genesis, when the archons see Adam animated by a light greater than their own, they become envious. They attempt to keep humanity ignorant of its origin. They create structures of distraction, systems of obedience, fear-based commandments. The Garden of Eden becomes a psychological battlefield. The serpent, often vilified in Orthodox interpretation, becomes ambiguous in Gnostic symbolism. In some texts, the serpent represents awakening, the impulse toward knowledge. The prohibition against the tree of knowledge becomes suspect. Why would a benevolent creator forbid awareness? In this framework, the Demiurge fears what humanity might remember. Sophia's role becomes even more complex. She is not simply the cause of the error. She becomes the hidden guide, the mother who seeks restoration. Her fall is tragic, but it sets in motion the possibility of gnosis, direct experiential knowledge of the higher source. The Gnostic savior, often identified with a higher manifestation of Christ, descends not to satisfy divine wrath, but to awaken remembrance. Salvation is not juridical, it is cognitive, it is ontological. It is the recognition that the world is not the ultimate reality, and that the spark within you originates beyond the ruler of this world. This is why these texts are destabilizing. They suggest that authority in the material realm may not correspond to ultimate authority. They imply that structures of control, cosmic or institutional, might not be aligned with the highest good. They reframe obedience as something potentially misdirected. The Demiurge in these writings is not cartoonishly evil. He is arrogant, convinced of his own supremacy. He governs through law, structure, and enforcement. He is described as having a lion's face and a serpent's body, a symbol of distorted power. And yet, above him, beyond his perception, the fullness remains untouched. Sophia's restoration becomes a symbol of the return to harmony. Her error does not annihilate the pleroma. It creates a separation that can be bridged through awareness. In this sense, the forbidden creation story is not merely an alternative mythology. It is a psychological map. The archons can be understood not only as cosmic rulers, but as forces of limitation within consciousness. Fear, ignorance, false certainty. The Demiurge becomes a metaphor for the egoic claim of absolute authority. But the texts also present it as cosmology, as metaphysical reality. This duality is part of their power. They operate on multiple levels simultaneously: mythic, symbolic, theological, psychological. They force the reader to question assumptions about the nature of God, the structure of the universe, and the origin of identity. If the creator of matter is not the highest source, then the highest source is beyond form, beyond image, beyond anthropomorphic projection. If the divine spark within humanity is not the property of the Demiurge, then the ultimate allegiance of the soul is not to the architect of this world, but to the ineffable fullness beyond it. This is the core of what they tried to hide, not necessarily because it is historically verifiable in a literal sense, but because it relocates spiritual authority from external structure to internal awakening. Sophia's story reminds us that even error can become the path to knowledge, that separation can become the catalyst for return, that ignorance can be dissolved not through submission, but through insight. And perhaps that is why these codices were buried in the sand instead of burned completely, because ideas like this do not vanish. They resurface. They wait for a generation willing to question inherited narratives, willing to read beyond the surface, willing to consider that the opening chapter of existence might be more complex than we were told. In the next investigation, we will go deeper into the figure born from Sophia's act. Who exactly is Yaldabaoth according to the Gnostic texts? How do the archons structure reality? And what does this cosmology imply about consciousness itself? Because once you understand the forbidden creation, you cannot unsee it.